Welcome back. It just so happens this week is the 18th annual National Farm Worker Awareness Week. The question is, how much of an impact do migrant workers have on Florida? Florida's Department of Health estimates upwards of 200,000 migrant workers and their families travel to Florida each year. They come from 33 countries, while the majority from Mexico. Most workers earn about $10 an hour, depending on how fast they are. One of the most vocal advocates against exploitation is the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. The group is based just 100 miles to the south of here and puts pressure on corporations who take advantage of migrant workers. Joining us for more is Andres Kobalasi, an immigration attorney with the Kenyan law firm Sarah Blackwell, and employment attorney with the Blackwell firm. She's also the president of Protect U.S. Workers. And Bob Spencer, the owner of West Coast Tomato based in Manatee County. But, welcome all. But Bob, let me start with you. So what is the situation right now with your workforce?
Well, the labor has tightened up. We don't have as many workers as we used to. We rely upon many immigrants to help us plant and harvest our crops. It's impossible to find people in this area who want to go into the fields and work anymore.
You know, I was telling you that before the show, I used to have a friend who owned a chain of car washes, and he said he could not get his own teenage son to work there. I mean, how often do you get teenagers or young people to come in and willing to do this work?
We as a society have gone soft in that area. People just don't want to go do certain jobs anymore. And it's a natural evolution that takes place in every country. As people become more affluent, they don't want to do certain jobs. But we still need our produce. We still need to have fruit and vegetables grown here, and we can't do that without a lot of labor. It's a labor-intensive crop.
Sarah, you and I talk about this very issue quite often. And by the way, congratulations. You were fresh off your national debut on 60 Minutes, and you were really terrific.
Thank you.
But you have made the point on this broadcast many times that if employers just paid higher wages, you would get American workers to do these jobs.
Well, I think it's important that we make a distinction between migrant workers and immigrant workers versus illegal immigrants or undocumented workers. Those are two totally different issues. And yes, I believe that if there is a shortage of workers, the issue isn't to bring in a bunch of people, especially allowing illegals to do it, so that the owners can basically exploit them to any way they want to get the work done. That's not the answer. If there aren't Americans willing to do the job, then we need to say, okay, we cannot allow a society that allows for us as Americans to think, oh, that's too good of a job, that we're too good for that job. So my opinion is that we change that ideal by fixing the system and not just allowing the illegals to stay illegal and not become legal, and then to allow owners of different companies to take advantage of them.
And Andres, I want to get to you in just a moment, but Bob, I want your reaction to that. What would it do to the market if you had to pay substantially more per employee to pick the tomatoes?
Well, first I'd like to say we probably pay closer to $12 an hour, but we are in direct competition with Mexico. Our produce, this time of the year, you buy it from Mexico or Florida. And we are fighting a losing battle. We've lost 60% of our crops over the years that are no longer grown because of Mexico. They're able to use much cheaper labor. So we can only increase our labor so much, and we go out of business.
And I want to get to labor and also regulations, which are also an important issue. But Andres, I wonder if you could give us some context in terms of the folks who are coming here to do this kind of work. Who are they? What is their intent when they come here when they go from farm to farm or state to state? Do they intend to go back home when they're done?
Well, first of all, I think they are good people. I think 99% are people that comes here to work hard. And your question is great, because on Friday I just met with one of them, and I asked her what she used to do in Mexico. And in Mexico, along with her children, a baby, and her husband, used to sell fruit on the street. I asked her what were her hours, and it was from 6 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. or later if they have not sold all the fruit.
All right, we are going to pick up on that point when we return. We are just getting started, and we'll be back right after we check the weather stations. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing the role of migrant workers for growers on the Suncoast and across Florida. A decrease in the number of workers this year is causing problems for farms and groves. How could it affect you? Our guest tonight, our immigration attorney, Andres Cabalasi, employment attorney, and president of Protect U.S. Workers, Sarah Blackwell, and the owner of West Coast Tomato, Bob Spencer. You know, since President Trump came into office, it's been widely reported there's been a 40% reduction in border crossings, illegal border crossings, and just earlier this month, ICE arrested 680 people across the country, attempted to come across the border, and as of Friday, it had issued more than 42,000 detainer requests, a 35% increase over the year before. Andres, what impact has this had on the number of migrant workers willing to come to the U.S. to do this work?
Well, it has definitely affected because people are afraid. People are afraid of being sent back or are afraid of a deportation proceeding. So it has definitely affected.
And Bob, is there, I mean, you can't say all your workers are here legally, or can you?
No, I mean, they provide documentation to us that shows that they're legal, but many times that documentation turns out to be not authentic. So no, it's been estimated as high as 70% of the agricultural workers are unauthorized workers.
You know, a lot of folks in our government talk a good game in terms of trying to do something about that. I mean, is the government out there actively trying to make sure that only legally, legal folks come in and do this kind of work?
Well, it's obvious that they have a greater presence now, and we're seeing that there are less people that are coming, and we're seeing our workforce shift over the last 2 or 3 years to more from the Caribbean.
And Haiti, as Adam
Haiti
reported,
is probably the largest country that we see on our farms now, whereas it was not that way in the past.
Are you seeing situations where, I mean, tomatoes are going bad on the vine out there?
We are starting to see that, and I know in California that's coming up, they are planting less acres this summer.
That means the price goes up.
Prices go up, but and more business shifts to Mexico. More produce is grown in Mexico because we are not allowing the workers to come in here and help us harvest the fruit.
And that's the issue I want to get to, because you're saying that the produce is coming in from Mexico. You have a lot of regulations in terms of pesticides and what you can and can't do and how you treat your employees. What impact does that have on you in terms of a competitive situation? What impact does it have for folks at home?
We are highly regulated, and we welcome that because it's there for a purpose. It's there to protect the consumer, to protect our children, because we are regulated, we grow, and we use products that are safe. They can eat our produce knowing that it's safe. It also protects the workers in the field. They can't be mistreated in the fields. We can't use crops, produce and pesticides too close to them. It protects the workers. So when we aren't allowed to grow because we can't get the harvesters, that production shifts to other countries that don't have those regulations, that don't have the oversight. So is the American consumer better off? I say no.
And Sarah, we have seen this in the grocery stores. When you get grapes from Chile or South America, sometimes there are bugs in it. It is coming in from abroad. How do you solve the problem? Just, aside from just a guest worker program, if 70% of these workers have not come here legally.
Right, 70% of field workers are illegal, and 67% of illegals are on welfare, and 78% of their children live under poverty. So that's the situation of the workers that we want to have. Farm workers, especially illegal workers, have absolutely no presence in Congress or lobbying, whereas farming and farm owners have all kinds of organizations where they can go and help push for legislation. And when you look up lobbyists in legislation, it's sugar versus beans versus corn versus potatoes. There's nobody saying, hey, did you know Fair Labor Standards Act has an exception for farm workers that they don't get overtime no matter how much they work, and that there's exceptions for children who can work. No one's fighting for the workers.
But when we post this story on Facebook later tonight, we're going to get viewers writing in saying just kick them all out. And then it raises the question, who will pick our crops and how much will it cost us if there are increased costs for labor?
Well, I believe the farm owners who hire these farm workers should be the spokesperson for those farm workers, who should go lobby and say, it's not okay, it's not fair. And if we have to change the tax system or regulations and not bring in crops that are full of bugs, the answer isn't, hey, letting pesticides and bugs in our produce. The answer is not exploiting illegals. The answer is farm owners getting together and saying, when we lobby, let's not just lobby in a way that protects us, and let's lobby for our workers.
You know, Andres, I'm going to refer you to something that Bob said to me before the show. You know, there are a lot of Americans who go to the Middle East, to Saudi Arabia, to you know, the countries out there to work contract jobs because they can make more money there, but they always come home. Is that any different than a lot of these migrant workers who are coming here and picking these crops?
I think a lot of them, if you were to give them the opportunity, will go back home and come back. And if they're treated fairly, they will be more than happy to do the job.
So Bob, what do you and your fellow owners do now? Because if this situation continues as it is, I can't imagine that next year at this time you're going to have any more workers. You'll probably have less.
Well, let me just say, the Florida tomato growers entered into an agreement with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, and we are regulated by them. We have the Fair Standards Food Council here in Sarasota that audits our farms throughout the year to make sure we treat our workers properly, and we welcome that. So there have been times in the past where the workers were not treated fairly, but you're exactly right. We're having to assess, even as we get ready for the fall, how much are we going to plant? Because we're putting millions of dollars in the ground. It's roughly $10,000 an acre, and are you willing to put that at risk if you can't get it out of the ground,
and
if you can't
folks,
harvest
if you're
the
listening
crops?
at home, what that means is prices will go up. That's, you know, that's just the law of economics. But Andres, you know, when we were looking at Adam's story, there are a lot of families that right now are afraid to even go to the grocery store because they feel like, you know, ICE is going to come in and take them away. So what can immigration attorneys, what can people in the community do right now, if anything?
Well, and a lot of those people are even residents, and some of them are married to U.S. citizens. So the fear is not only on those that do not have any legal status, but also some of them that have legal status are also afraid. So I think the best thing you can do at this time is definitely not commit any crimes and keep calm.
You know, Sarah, you are out on the forefront, and especially when we're talking about the H-1B visa, and you see how difficult, even with that, it is to get Congress to do anything.
Right.
You had assurances from President Trump when he was running for office that he would do something. I know you're incredibly disappointed about that.
Right.
So, and we only have a few seconds left. Do you have any confidence that immigration is really going to be something that we're going to get done now?
I believe that for the illegal immigration and the issue we're talking about now, what President Trump is doing, executing the laws, making people more afraid, I'm hoping that the side effect of that is that getting together, tomato workers getting together and owners saying, we are going to treat our workers properly and get them to stay and take care of them. It's one tomato farmer who doesn't do that, who undercuts them. All of a sudden now they have to compete with people who don't abide by the rules.
Let's take a quick break, and when we return we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus what some of our viewers are saying about the failure to repeal and replace Obamacare. Welcome back. How could the shortage of migrant workers affect our local growers this year and in years to come? Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. Andres, where do we go from here? I mean, would you predict that the number of migrants coming here to pick the tomatoes or strawberries is steadily going to decrease unless what happens?
I think it may decrease, but I think between Mexico and other Latin America countries and the United States, we have the best of both worlds. We have in the United States the money, the knowledge, and the technology to take advantage of the labor force that in Mexico and other Latin America countries we have. And together, those components, I think it can take us to the next level.
Sarah, what do people take away from the conversation that we've been having tonight and what we showed in terms of businesses like Bob's, which are really struggling now in terms of finding enough people to do the work?
Well, I believe that consumers having to pay more prices for fruit or vegetable because we're not going to exploit people who are in a bad situation isn't. I don't care what the consumer has to deal with. When we got rid of slavery, we didn't say, oh, cotton's going to go up, so why don't we not deal with it? When we have people who are illegally here, as an immigration attorney, there's really not much he can do. He can't help them become legal. He can't help them in that situation. So the illegals have no ability to stand up for themselves. They have no lobbying. They have nothing. So I believe if the farm worker or the farm owners looked at themselves as representatives of the farm workers, the illegal ones and the legal ones, and tried to find a way together with legislation of how to take care of their workers and to deal with the competition from foreign countries. I think that's where we should start.
But Bob, what would happen if you had to significantly increase the cost of your product?
Well, it would be hard to stay in business. But what our workers want is a workable guest worker program that allows them to have an identification card to come here. When they're here legally, they're not abused. When they're here illegally, people take advantage of them in terrible ways. And I'm not talking about the farmers, I'm talking about people around them that can prey on them.
You know, is that argument separate from the immigration argument in terms of citizenship?
Yes, I think most of them don't want citizenship. They would prefer to go back to their family and friends in Mexico and earn money here for a short period of time. So those two issues have gotten put together, and it's tough to separate.
We could go on and on about this, but we can't. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about Friday's topic, the latest week of the Trump administration. Last week, we learned the FBI is investigating contacts between Trump campaign officials and Russia. James Comey also debunked Trump's unsubstantiated claim he was wiretapped by former President Obama. The big finale of the week, the House Republicans pulled their bill to repeal and replace Obamacare, saying they simply don't have the votes. Here's what some of you are saying. Kenneth Lammers writes, I am very disappointed with the Republican Party on not agreeing on a new health care plan. They have been whining and complaining for the past 7 years on repealing it, and when they have the chance to do it, they can't even get their own party to come up with a plan. Kathy Hart writes, people need to stop calling this Obamacare and refer it to by what it was meant to be, the Affordable Health Care Act, or AHCA. Fix that. Simple changes need to be made. Get the political heads out of the way and fix the act. And Robert Kosk writes, they only had 6 years to come up with a Republican replacement. Let's not rush them. What do you think about the shortage of migrant workers? Join the conversation by visiting our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Andres I'll get your name right. Kulabasi is an immigration attorney with the Kenyon Law Group. Sarah Blackwell is an employment attorney and president of Protect U.S. Workers. And Bob Spencer is the owner of West Coast Tomato.